The last time that I was here, when Ebrima was introducing me, he said, Tawanda is going to speak in English. So let's prepare to use the English part of our brain. And I was saying, Ebrima, the problem is that because even on that English side, I'm not sure how much I have, so it's almost like I'm not bringing in a brain into the conversation. But I'm really pleased to see you and to see many good friends, African friends, over the years. Some that I will embarrass because they didn't want to be named or they wanted to be named later. But I was so pleased to see Fatoumata, who many years ago, I worked closely with in her advocacy as a respected lawyer when she was working closely with the Open Society Justice Initiative. And Professor Tade Aine, who is here with MasterCard Foundation. Tade, if you can raise your hand.
I'll get up.
And Tade has been many things, and I won't spend too much time talking about his CV, but very honored to see him. And there are many other friends, but I will just cite two others. So Aisha, who will be introduced later, is somebody that I also worked with long back when she was leading the Fawe initiative on women in the education sector, promoting education. And I'm sure that will be acknowledged, but it's also good again to see the intersections. And of course, our leadership, Han Diaye, are here in Senegal. Oxfam is also good to be in her country. So Ebrima asked me to just say very few words, very briefly, about some of the things that we might want to be thinking about and some of the things that we reflected on as a board as we think about how the world is changing and how we can position ourselves. So firstly, while I'm coming from Oxfam America, and I have that American loyalty, but I also have Zimbabwean loyalty. I was born in Zimbabwe. So those who are here and are from Senegal will already know that I'm envious while I am here. And you know why I am envious. So for a long time in Zimbabwe, we have tried to see organizing of young people expressing themselves politically, and to see the courage that we saw here in Senegal is something that we are envious of. I know Briggs will also speak later, he's from Zimbabwe. So I won't say too much about that envy, but I have to acknowledge it. But I say that in order to say as a starting point, politics matters, governance matters. We know that in 2022, just here in this region, there was a lot of expenditures that we were putting, money that we were putting, or that our governments have been putting in security and defense, because they are emphasizing that, right? So when we look actually at the 2022 percentage of the budget, just here in Senegal, 6.7% of the budget going to defense. That's actually one of the more decent ones. But the big ones actually, as you went further, in Niger, 8.3% of the budget was going into defense, even as we know all the needs that are there in Niger in terms of humanitarian needs, in terms of needs for education and so on. Similarly, in Burkina Faso, 12.4% of the money was going into defense expenditure, for instance. But we know the needs for women to be able to access sanitary products in school. We know the needs for education. We know the needs for agricultural support. We know many other needs that are there. We could go on with Mali as an example, again, with 11.6% of the budget, or Chad, where it leapt actually to 21.2% of the budget in 2022. So the reality is that politics matters, governance matters. The decisions that we are making about allocating resources are important, and they make a difference in terms of the future that we are looking for. We have seen and we heard from Ebrima how much Africa is endowed with rich minerals. We know how much we could light up all of Africa and Southern Europe if we actually had Inga Dam in the DRC working properly as a hydroelectric project generating electricity. We know that the lithium that the world needs today in order for us to have a transition in terms of our energy needs as a world is very much produced in Africa, apart from countries like Chile, countries like Argentina, and countries like China. But many countries in Africa are very important lithium producers. We know just here in the neighborhood, in the Sahel, the production of key minerals such as uranium or key extractives such as uranium. I could go on in terms of the riches that are in the soils of the African continent. Yet at the same time, we know that the African continent is the single place across the world where we are actually seeing a regression in some of the important statistics about how people are actually living life. I often say to Kumba, whose work I have respected a lot, I've appreciated when she and others started Africans Rising as an organization, because they were trying to inspire us. They were trying to say, don't be despondent. Don't just walk like this as a continent, browbeaten. You are rising. But at the same time, I've said to her, let's also be careful to not misrepresent to ourselves or to others the reality of our continent. We really aren't rising at the moment. And let's face that reality. I'm not talking about people that are here who hold progressive views and all the things that you're trying to do to change our fortunes. I'm talking about the reality out there, where we know that while in 2000, the year 2000, 350 million Africans did not have access to basic drinking water. And by 20 years later, in 2020, that number had not improved. It had actually worsened by 37 more million people being added to that number. And we know that 197 million people in Africa are exercising or practicing open defecation, no toilet, literally going out into the bush to help themselves, as they say, in many of our native languages, as a euphemism. So, if we think about the reality of our continent, not based on our reality, those of us who are here, who are able to dress well for occasions like this, who are able to be in this space, but the wretched of our continent, as it were, in the Frantz Fanon sense of the wretched of the earth, our continent has a lot that it needs to do to progress. So I'm grateful to be in your company, those who are thinking about the future of this continent in all the ways that you are. I'm grateful that I was part of conversations at the TrustAfrica board with the staff, with Ebrima, with Briggs and colleagues, thinking programmatically about challenges that Africa is facing, that the world is facing, as we look at a future where the Africa mining vision that has been developed on our minerals and our extractives might perhaps make a difference if we take it seriously and we are able to change accountability for the extraction of the minerals that lie in our soils, and are able to say, when we generate income from these minerals, that income must go to our people and must improve our schools and must improve our hospitals. That when we have the Africa Free Trade Agreement, comprehensive as it is and continental as it is, we are able to use it. That we are able to use some of the democratization energy that is in our young people to give them a politics that enables decisions to be made in a better way. But that also, as things are changing globally, including that I arrived here coming from Nairobi, where we were in a civil society meeting of the United Nations, thinking about a future United Nations. How do we imagine a new United Nations, a new multilateralism, where we won't sit here in the pain that 1 million lives have been lost because of the exercise of the veto by the Security Council at the United Nations in the last several years in countries or spaces such as Gaza, such as Yemen, such as Syria, and so on. But where we can have a world which is more accountable, where governments and states that are in the Security Council, in a revised Security Council, hopefully, governments and states that are in other multilateral spaces are making decisions for our lives, for our people, and not for arms industries, not for those that sell arms, not for those that sell bombs, not for those that are extracting oil and plundering the forests of Africa, but for those African children that daily are yearning for a better life. So these were the conversations that we were in, and I look forward to many more opportunities of engaging with you on behalf of Oxfam, on behalf of the Trust Africa board, in terms of ideas, as we work with you on all these issues. Thank you very much.